So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a very short span of time. Now remember, these are just current affairs, but there are other things to your UPSC examination as well. There are many other static subjects. There is a lot more in your UPSC syllabus. So if you want to cover your entire UPSC syllabus with proper guidance, proper strategy, and get prepared for next UPSC examination, then you should join our UPSC Gurukul course. If you're interested, then WhatsApp us on this number given at the bottom of the screen. Okay, we'll be happy to help you out. So join UPSC Gurukul batch if you really want to get ready, properly ready for next year or next to next year's UPSC examination. All right. Let's start with today's current affairs. But before starting, I always remind this to you that just watching this lecture would be job half done. Because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Now, you can revise it from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. And the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below this video. Okay, now we have that out of the way. Let's start today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. Okay, so let's begin. So, daily current affairs, 19th August, Tuesday, and here is the list of topics. Number one on this list is equivalence in the OBC creamy layer. You all know about OBC reservation, right? But certain categories of OBC are not allowed to get the benefits of this reservation. These people belong to the creamy layer. Now, recently, Government of India has decided to make some changes in this definition of creamy layer. Who is included, who is not included. Okay, so we'll talk about all of this. Equivalence in OBC creamy layer. Clear? We'll also talk about the concept of creamy layer, how did it originate, all of that. Then next topic is how courts overturn election results. If there is an election and if it has been found out that some fraudulent means, some bad things, some corrupt things happened during the election process, well, the courts can overturn the election results. But there is a proper procedure to that. So we should be aware of that procedure because questions might be asked. So we will talk about how courts overturn election results. Okay. Then recently opposition parties, the opposition India bloc has said that they are going to start proceedings for removal of Chief Election Commissioner. Okay. Now they are going to start the proceedings or basically have discussions on it. But we need to be aware of the removal process of election commissioners. Okay. How they are removed. So we'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about Cambridge Dictionary update. Some new words, some new slangs which are used by Gen Z and Gen Alpha. This new generation uses some words like delulu, right? So these words have been added in Cambridge Dictionary. So now they have become a part of, or they have officially become a part of English language. So we'll talk about these words and we'll also talk about the criteria of inclusion of all the words in Cambridge Dictionary. Okay, how are words included in Cambridge Dictionary? What criteria is followed? Clear? So these are the four topics that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing them one by one, starting with equivalence in OBC creamy layer. So you all know that, well, in various government jobs and educational institutions, 27% reservation is for other backward classes, OBCs, right? But this OBC reservation has a particular catch, okay? Well, not all OBCs are included or eligible for reservation. There is a particular category of OBCs which are well off, who are well off. They are not given these reservation benefits. This particular category of OBCs is called creamy layer, okay? Now, the government has regularly updated the definition of creamy layer. Who comes in creamy layer, who does not. If your parents have grade A posts in Government of India, you are part of creamy layer, you won't get reservation. And similarly, there are many other criteria of identifying people who belong to creamy layer. And people who belong to creamy layer won't get the benefits of reservation. I'm sure every one of you is aware of this fact, right? But there are some loopholes, some problems with respect to this inclusion and exclusion of people in creamy layer. Okay, some people who are included in creamy layer and some people who are excluded in creamy layer, excluded from creamy layer. Well, they both have similar circumstances. Yet, These excluded people get reservation benefits and these included people do not. And many people have therefore called out that this system is unfair. You need to create a proper definition of creamy layer. You need to upgrade the definition of creamy layer. Okay? Because there are some who should belong to creamy layer category, but they don't, and they get reservation benefits. Right? There are many inclusion and exclusion errors. So through this new action, central government is trying to rectify these inclusion and exclusion errors. Now the thing is, today in this lecture, we are not going to talk about these inclusion and exclusion errors. Who is eligible for creamy layer, who is not eligible for creamy layer. We won't get into that. Okay, because questions won't be asked with respect to that. UPSC or any other civil services examination won't ask you questions as to whether grade B people, people who are in grade B posts, their children are part of creamy layer or not. These specific particular questions won't be asked by civil services examinations or UPSC. They won't get into that. But they might get into the concept of creamy layer. How did it originate? Okay? And which commission takes care of other backward classes in India? There is a proper statutory commission, right? These questions might be asked, not the questions related to inclusion, exclusion, okay? Therefore, in this particular topic, we will only talk about the concept of creamy layer, right? And this commission called National Commission on Backward Classes. Clear? So we won't get into the nitty-gritties because questions won't be asked from nitty-gritties. Clear? So let's talk about this. Okay. So equivalence in OBC creamy layer. Okay. By equivalence, we mean that inclusion exclusion errors should be rectified. Those who are deserving to be part of creamy layer everywhere should be part of creamy layer. There are some loopholes, some problems. So government is going to rectify that. Clear? Now Government of India said that this rectification process, well, for that we have conducted exhaustive consultations with Niti Aayog and National Commission for Backward Classes and other stakeholders as well. After conducting exhaustive consultations with these bodies, we are coming out with this new notification which will basically bring about some equivalence in OBC creamy layer. Now for us, what is important? First of all, we need to know about this concept of creamy layer. Okay? How did it originate? What is the purpose behind this? And then we'll talk about NCBC. Clear? So let's talk about this. Okay. So creamy layer. Where did the concept originate? Look, since the dawn of our constitution, since the beginning of our constitution, there has been reservation in government jobs at least for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. But the government felt that there are other castes in India as well which are discriminated against and they don't have equal opportunities for representation in public employment. Apart from SCs and STs, there are other castes which are backward, socially backward, educationally backward. Therefore, we need to uplift them also. So for that, government established a commission called Mandal Commission. Okay, this Mandal Commission will inquire into all these castes which are socially and educationally backward and basically recommend some measures to uplift them, right? Now this Mandal Commission sat and Mandal Commission gave its recommendations. There were many recommendations, but the most important recommendation was 27% reservation in public employment. So apart from SC/ST reservation, there should be 27% reservation for other backward classes. Okay, the government accepted this recommendation, but there were some people who were not happy with this extra reservation. They said that there is too much reservation. We shouldn't give this 27% reservation to OBCs. Therefore, this action of the government was challenged in court, Supreme Court. And Supreme Court delivered one of the most landmark verdict. Okay, the name of the case was Indira Sahni versus Union of India in 1992. And that is why the judgment delivered by Supreme Court with respect to 27% OBC reservation is also referred to as Indira Sahni judgment or Mandal case judgment because it is used interchangeably. It is referred to as Mandal case also, Indira Sahni case also. Now, in that judgment, Supreme Court basically accepted this 27% reservation. Okay, Supreme Court said, yes, this is allowed. We should go ahead with this 27% reservation. But Supreme Court added two caveats. One caveat was that Supreme Court said that there are some people who are privileged. Okay, there are some people who earn a lot of money. They are in top-notch government jobs, right? But they happen to be other backward castes. They belong to this community, yet they are well off. They shouldn't be given the benefit of reservation. Okay, the less well off OBCs should be given the benefit of reservation. By the way, this thing is not there in SC/STs. Even well off SCs and STs are eligible for reservations. But for OBCs, Supreme Court said that well off OBCs shouldn't be given this benefit of reservations. Okay. Therefore, Supreme Court added this concept of creamy layer. Creamy layer basically, this layer basically identifies those OBCs which are well off, have all the best educational facilities, other facilities. So therefore, they shouldn't be given reservation. Okay. So Supreme Court identified this concept of creamy layer and said creamy layer OBCs won't be given reservation benefits. Now it was up to the central government to identify who belongs to this creamy layer. Okay. So central government came out with a notification in 1993 and basically gave certain criteria. Okay, gave qualifications and disqualifications of families who belong to creamy layer. Some examples are, well, people whose parents, okay, are in grade A government jobs, grade B government jobs, grade A posts, assistant professors, all the well-off employment in government, okay, their children won't get these benefits. So they gave this thing, okay. They also gave income or wealth test, that families who earn more than this much income, there is a particular threshold. If families earn more than that, well, they would be included in creamy layer. So all of this was given. Make sense? This is what creamy layer is. So this was caveat number one, creamy layer. Along with that, Indira Sahni judgment also said that you can give n number of reservations. Government can give reservations to whoever they want, but the total amount of reservations for all people, SC, STs, OBCs, should not exceed 50% ceiling. Reservation shouldn't be more than 50%. So this 50% ceiling and this creamy layer concept was given by Indira Sahni judgment. Clear? There were many revisions to this definition, subsequent revisions to this definition of creamy layer by the central government in subsequent years, okay, in 2004, 2012, many times. But today, central government is trying to rectify these inclusion-exclusion errors which we talked about earlier. Clear? Now, for that, central government is going to basically take the opinion of National Commission for Backward Classes. Okay, so what is this commission? Let's talk about this. So, NCBC. Basically, when Mandal Commission was established, Mandal Commission, apart from recommending 27% quota, they also said that there should be a commission which should inquire into these other backward classes. What is their situation and how they can be uplifted. So accepting Mandal Commission recommendations, a statutory body was formed in 1993 called National Commission for Backward Classes. Okay, this was a statutory body because it was established by a law of parliament. Clear? But this statutory body was given constitutional status by Constitutional Amendment Act 102nd in 2018. So it was a statutory body, but then it became a constitutional body by Constitutional Amendment Act 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act 2018 by inserting Article 338B. So Article 338B basically is NCBC. Okay, the job of NCBC is to identify which castes are other backward castes. They are also consulted with respect to matters of reservation and all the other things. Okay, their members are a chairman, vice chairman, and 3 members. All of them are appointed by the president. Okay, their tenure is 3 years, and they are eligible for reappointment, but for not more than 2 years, 2 terms, not 2 years, 2 terms. One 3-year term, the other 3-year term, not more than that. Clear? So this is NCBC. Simple? Make sense? Alright. Now let's quickly shift our focus to second topic, and that is how courts overturn elections. Now you see, to instill faith in our democracy, people should have faith in our elections. Otherwise, people won't have faith in our democracy, right? Now, elections is a messy process. Conducting elections is a messy process, and there are some errors, some problems, some issues that always come up. Issues can be with respect to casting of votes, issues can be with respect to counting of votes, issues can be with respect to corrupt and electoral practices, corruption, malpractices. Okay, there are many issues that have happened in the past as well. Therefore, if elections are conducted in a particular area through fraudulent means, or there was some fraud, electoral fraud, then a person can challenge the election results in our courts. Okay, and then courts will inquire into the matter. Okay, and declare whether these elections are null and void or these elections are fair. So the matter is left to the courts. Clear? Now the reason why we are discussing this is because recently Supreme Court of India basically ordered recounting of votes in one particular panchayat elections in Haryana, Panipat district of Haryana. Okay, one particular panchayat had some problems, so Supreme Court ordered recounting of votes in that area. That is why this issue is in the news. Clear? But we will cover this entire topic exhaustively. So let's talk about this. Okay. So how courts overturn elections. So if anyone finds out that there is a problem in any election, okay, in any polling booth or in any election of any district or anywhere, okay, if there is any problem in any election process, okay, then, well, there is a proper procedure. There is a proper procedure that is established. Okay, the procedure is established as per Representation of People's Act 1951 for elections to Parliament, State Legislative Assembly, State Legislative Councils. For elections related to Panchayat and municipalities, well, different states have their own laws. Okay, but there is a proper procedure to challenge the election results. So what is that proper procedure? Okay, let's talk about this. So challenging elections. So if we are talking about elections to Parliament, State Legislative Assembly, State Legislative Councils, the states which have legislative councils. If we are talking about elections to these bodies, right? Well, these elections can be challenged via an election petition. Okay, so if you do not agree with the results of this election, you can file an election petition in High Court of the concerned state. So wherever this malpractice, electoral fraud occurred, in that High Court, the High Court of that state, you can file an election petition. Clear? And then High Court will decide what's the matter. If we are talking about elections of local bodies, that is panchayats and municipalities, well, for that too, you have to file an election petition. But the election petition can be filed in that district court. Okay, civil district court. By the way, if you are not happy with the verdict of any court, you can appeal it in Supreme Court. That's a different matter. But the election petition shall be filed in district court for elections of local bodies, in High Court for elections of Parliament, State Legislative Assembly and State Legislative Councils. Okay. Now, there are a few things that you have to take care of while filing election petitions. First of all, the courts say that your election petition should contain all the proper proof. In concise manner. Okay, in a summarized way, your election petition should contain all the proofs to prove that, well, this election is fraud. Clear? So it should have proper proofs. The materials should prove. The evidentiary materials should be there. Second is, you cannot file this election petition after 45 days of declaration of results. Within 45 days, you have to file it. Third is principle of locus standi is followed. Locus standi means that the person who is affected, that person can only file a case. Okay, that means this election petition can only be filed by a candidate who fought in that election or the elector, the voter of that election. Okay, so these two are the only affected parties in this fraudulent election. Okay, that is why principle of locus standi, the affected party only gets to file a petition, that is followed. Okay, so remember this word locus standi, though we will talk about this in our polity lectures, but remember this word. Okay, so the candidate who is affected or the elector who is affected, only they can file election petitions challenging the elections. Okay, now what are the grounds for challenging elections? Okay, grounds for invalidating the elections. The courts can invalidate an election if following grounds are there. There is bribery or undue influence. Okay, influence of violence, use of violence to force voters to vote for a particular candidate, that is there. Promoting enmity among social groups, okay, using communalism, that is there. If the winning candidate was not qualified or was disqualified on the date of their election, if the candidate who won the election was actually not qualified for fighting these elections, that is there. Improper rejection of a nomination paper of an electoral candidate. So if your nomination paper gets rejected, but still you fought elections. Improper acceptance of nomination or improper reception or rejection of votes. Non-compliance, the last one is very important. Non-compliance of constitution or any of the rules mentioned in various election laws. So there is Representation of Peoples Act 1951. There are various state laws. If your election process did not follow the rules mentioned in this, then it can be declared null and void. Okay, so these are the grounds. You don't have to remember all of them. Okay, this is just to give you a brief idea. Now, once the election is declared null and void, then what can the court do? Generally, courts order repolling of elections. Okay, so if in a particular polling booth there was some fraud, so the court would order repolling, re-election in that area. Okay, that is the general go-to mechanism. Okay, this is generally followed. So if elections are declared null and void, then mostly court orders repolling. But if it is proved that the reason why there is fraud in these elections is because counting of votes was not done properly. Okay, so in rare occasions, the courts can order recounting of votes. Bring the ballot boxes again or the EVM machines and recount the votes there, because it has been proven that there has been some counting error. Okay, and in extremely rare circumstances, the Supreme Court or the High Court, basically the courts, can declare some other candidate as the winner. If the winning candidate, it's proved that the winning candidate won the elections through fraud, the candidate who came second can be declared winner. So these are the three things that the courts can do if the election is proved to be null and void. Clear? Simple. That's about it. All right. Now let's quickly shift our focus to removal of election commissioners. So you all know that supervision, superintendence, conduct of elections in India, when it comes to parliamentary elections or state elections, lies with Election Commission of India, right? Now, Election Commission of India consists of Chief Election Commissioner and 2 other election commissioners, right? This is the thing. Now, they have security of tenure, they have many things so that they basically do their job in free and fair manner. Clear? But if many people think, many of our politicians think that Election Commission is not being fair, well, there is a process to remove them as well. And recently, India Bloc, the opposition parties, have some issues with the current Chief Election Commissioner, and they have decided to start the proceedings for removing Chief Election Commissioner. Okay? So for us UPSC aspirants or aspirants of any other state civil services examination, it is very important to know what is the entire process of appointment of election commissioners and removal of election commissioners, because this is very important. Our democracy basically survives on this. If Election Commission of India is not fair, then there is a threat to our democracy, electoral democracy. That is why it is important for us to know about this constitutional office. Clear? So let's talk about this. So, removal of election commissioners. First, let's talk about the appointment of election commissioners. Okay. Now, the appointment of election commissioners comes through, the power of appointment of election commissioners comes through Article 324. Okay. Now, up till 2023, the election commission, the chief election commissioner and other election commissioners were appointed by the president, basically the central government. Okay. Because Article 324 says that the election commissioners shall be appointed by the president, but Article 324 said that Parliament by law can regulate this entire process of appointment. Okay, Parliament has the power to regulate this entire process of appointment, but until 2023, Parliament did not make any law. That is why election commissioners in India were appointed by the president. Now, many parties and many experts objected to this because they thought that if you give the power to appoint election commissioners just to the president, okay, and if this power solely lies with the president, then the ruling party can basically appoint their favorites in this election commission. So, ruling party can appoint their favorites in this election commission. This can happen, right? This is a possibility because the constitution says that it's up to the president, but yes, Parliament can regulate by law. Up till now, there was no parliamentary law. So many people allege that ruling parties, whenever they are elected, they appoint their favorites as election commissioners. So to stop that, in 2023, a law was made by Parliament that is known as Chief Election Commissioner and Other Election Commissioners Act. Okay, as per this law, now a proper detailed process is given as far as the appointment of election commissioners is concerned. Okay, now what is that detailed process? Hear me out carefully. Okay, so basically this law, this parliamentary law has said that it gave a particular qualification criteria. Okay, it said that only these people shall be appointed for the post of election commissioner. Okay, so it gave a proper set of qualifications. Some of these qualifications are that person should have held post of not less than secretary under government, secretary to the government. Okay, this should be there, and should have a fair knowledge of conduct of elections, how elections are conducted. Okay, these qualifications are given. Now, what's the process? Okay, there will be a search committee. Okay, headed by law minister, union law minister, and two other IAS officers, basically joint secretary. Okay, so law minister and two other officers. This will be a search committee which will search for candidates, and then they will recommend a list of 5 candidates. They can even recommend more also. After they have given this list of 5 candidates, this list will go to a selection committee. Okay, this list will go to a selection committee. Clear? Now, this selection committee will choose chief election commissioner from this list. Okay, but who are the members of this selection committee? Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition, and another cabinet minister. So basically, for appointment of election commissioners, the opinion of Leader of Opposition is taken into account. Through this, you ensure that only those election commissioners are chosen who are not biased, because leader of opposition is there. He participates in the selection process. By the way, section 8 of this law, this parliamentary law, also says that this selection committee is not bound by the list provided by search committee. Generally, this selection committee chooses candidates from this list provided by search committee, by law minister. But they are not bound by it. They can choose any other candidate also. It's up to them. Clear? So this is the entire appointment process. To remove all the biases, well, this process was given in 2023. Before this, it was only up to the president. Clear? Now let's talk about removal of Chief Election Commissioner. So Article 324 Clause 5 of our Constitution says that Chief Election Commissioner can only be removed on the same grounds and manner as a Supreme Court judge. Judge of a Supreme Court. So the way you remove a judge of a Supreme Court, that is the same way you can remove Chief Election Commissioner. Now this process, this thing was mentioned in our Constitution so that our election commissioners can work independently. They are not threatened by government in power. Okay, so any politician in power can threaten them that we will remove you or we will transfer you or do anything. So do whatever we are saying. So to protect them from that, well, their removal was made extremely difficult. Similar to a judge of a Supreme Court. And you know the process of removal of judge of a Supreme Court, right? It is a very difficult process. You require 2/3 majority in Lok Sabha, 2/3 majority in Rajya Sabha, plus there are other things as well that have to be followed. Same protections are given to Chief Election Commissioner. Okay, so on the same grounds and manner as Supreme Court judge. A Supreme Court judge can only be removed on the grounds of proved misbehavior. So the misbehavior has to be proved. Corruption allegations have to be proved, or incapacity if he is mentally incapable or physically incapable. Only on these grounds you can remove a Supreme Court judge and you can remove a Chief Election Commissioner. Plus then there is this entire process of 2/3 majority in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. This is to make Chief Election Commissioner immune from threats of the ruling party, basically. That is the case, right? But remember, this facility is only provided to Chief Election Commissioner. Other election commissioners, okay, can be removed by President on the recommendation of Chief Election Commissioner. For that, for them, this protection of Supreme Court judge is not given. They can be removed anytime by the President on the recommendation of Chief Election Commissioner. But Chief Election Commissioner has these protections. Clear? And that is what the India bloc is saying. They are going to start these proceedings. Clear? Make sense? It's simple now? Alright. So some of you who have covered polity already, this was a good revision. And for some of you who have not covered polity, well, you should start covering it. Not much time is left. Okay? Nonetheless, we will quickly shift our focus to second topic, and that is Cambridge Dictionary upgrade. Okay? So every year, every now and then, new words are added to Cambridge Dictionary. And once these words are added to Cambridge Dictionary, they officially become the part of English language. Now, you all know that these days, this new generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, have started using these new words like delulu, skibidi, okay, treadwife, and many words that are used by Gen Z. Now, these words have become so popular and they are used so frequently that, well, Cambridge decided to include it in its lexicon, right? This is what the news is all about. So we'll talk about these 4 words that have been added to this dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, okay? We'll talk about the meanings of these 4 words, and then we'll talk about the criteria followed by Cambridge to include any word into their dictionary, okay? So let's talk about this. Plus, through this, you will learn some new words as well. So pay close attention. All right. So Cambridge Dictionary upgrade. So which words have been added? So first of all, tradewife. Tradewife basically comes from by combining 2 words called traditional wife. Traditional wife, who basically, well, these are wives. Basically, this is used for women who enjoy following the role of a traditional wife, taking care of children, cooking for her husband, right? All the traditional gender roles that were attributed to a wife. Well, if a woman follows that, well, that is a trade wife, old school Indian wife, not Indian wife, old school wife. For them, this word trade wife is used. Then there is this word called delulu, delusional. It comes from the English word delusional, which means, well, you are far removed from reality. You think something else, reality is something else. You're living in delusion, some other world. That is delulu. Okay. Then there is broligarchs. Well, bro comes from the word bros. Bros, you all know, hey bro, what's up bro? This is the same bro. Oligarchs is an English word which means that there are some few rich people who control the politics of a country. You all know about this, right? There are few rich people in every country who control the politics, the government of that country, right? Those are known as oligarchs. The few rich people who rule that area, oligarchs. Now, broligarchs is a term that is used for these tech bros, right? Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, right? These are these CEOs or owners of these big tech companies that have too much money, too much power, and too much political power as well. So, well, the traditional word used for these tech people was tech bros. Now they have also started getting political power. So they have also become oligarchs. So there is a new word for them, broligarchs. That's what broligarchs is. Okay. And skibidi. Skibidi means absurd. If you see someone doing something absurd, something really absurd, right? Absurd things out of this world, makes no sense at all, then you generally refer to that action as skibidi. Right? These words have been added. Now, some of these words are, you need to know this term, portmanteau. Some of these words are portmanteau. Portmanteau are those words which are made by combining two words, like breakfast plus lunch, brunch, right? There are a few words which are created by combining two words. Yes? Those are referred to as portmanteau, right? Now, for example, broligarch is a portmanteau, trade wife is a portmanteau. So remember this term portmanteau. Clear? Now let's talk about the criteria used by Cambridge University. So basically, this dictionary is also known as lexicon. Lexicon is basically simply put, lexicon is dictionary. Okay, lexicon is the group of basically vocabulary. Collection of words, lexicon, English dictionary. Now, Cambridge employs lexicographers, people who are experts in including and excluding words in English language. Okay, these lexicographers basically look at two things. First, how frequently this new word is being used. Frequency of usage in newspapers, whether delulu is being used in newspapers quite a lot, in casual conversations quite a lot, in academic texts quite a lot. So this is looked at. Then ephemerality. What is ephemerality? Ephemerality comes from the word ephemeral. Ephemeral means something that is short-lived, which comes and quickly fades away, right? Ephemeral. So if these words are ephemeral, then they are not included in dictionary. Okay, and there are various words which come and go with internet. Internet is full of trends. There is a word that becomes trendy and then it quickly goes away. Those words are not included in the dictionary. Okay, only those words who can stay for longer periods of time, who have now become almost official, they are chosen. So ephemerality is looked at. Okay, so words that are ephemeral are not included. Okay, so this is the criteria. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series and you revise it from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. So please do not forget to do that. And I will see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.